All right, ladies and gents. First noun clause exercise. Exercise A, underline the noun clause in each sentence below. Easy stuff, okay? Go ahead and pause the video, do these 5, come back and we'll talk answers. All right. Now the end. Let me get out my trusty dusty little highlighter there. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Number 1, what you should wear inside a temple. Heyo. This is, I know it seems goofy. I know it seems crazy, but this is an independent clause. And then the noun clause, you should start thinking in functions now. What function does that noun clause have? Think about it. Predicate nominative. Good. Remember, function is what it does. Part of speech is what it is, noun. Function is what it does. Direct object, indirect object, subject, etc. Boom! Number 2. Which parts of the temple can be visited? You understood, find out, is your independent clause, and the stuff in yellow is the noun clause, and they function as a direct object. Whether we will see a temple elephant even, is the noun clause. We don't know. Now, one thing I hope you're noticing about these noun clauses is quite often you're going to get those very tiny independent clauses whenever you have a noun clause. And the reason why that is because the noun clause adds a lot of information and it's part of a function of that independent clause. It helps make that independent clause a little bit bigger, because it's a direct object or because it's a subject or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Although when it is a subject, it's actually 2 subordinate clauses, isn't it? We don't know. What's the function of the noun clause in number 3? As I sip my Dr. P. That's right, it is a direct object. Number 4, Bobby Orr, boom. Whoever is offered fresh coconut is being honored. Now, here's a little Ayers trick. I don't know if this is a constant, but I'm a writer, so I'm a very observational person. And what I observe is when noun clauses are the subject of an independent clause, of a sentence that's going to be an independent clause, they tend to be right next to the verb. They are the subject, and they go right before the verb because they're in that subject position. So is being honored, as we discussed in the lecture, isn't a clause. It needs the noun clause to become independent. And that's goofy, and you just kind of got to get that. All right, so number 4, the highlighted section is the subject of is being honored, and that makes the independent clause. And finally, boom. I understand is the independent clause, and the yellow section, the highlighted section, of course, is the noun clause, and it functions how? As a direct object for understand. Note up here, too, I wish I'd seen that at the beginning, boom. There are some common marking words for ye olde noun clauses. Let's move on down to these 10. And now, as you see, you are being asked, bam, to find the function. Oh, yeah. The function. You're familiar with all these functions. Now, remember, if you're a little shaky on object of a preposition, the object of a preposition is the noun that finishes the prepositional phrase. So if your prepositional phrase is on the dock, dock would be the object of the preposition. If your prepositional phrase is in a glass, glass would be the prepositional, the object of the preposition. So for it to be an object of the preposition, you're going to have this fat clause that's attached to a preposition. Okay? So do numbers 6 through 15, pause the video, do 6 through 15, come back and we will talk answers. Okie dokie. If you haven't put functions to all your noun clauses, do that before you listen to the following answers, because that was part of the directions. Number 6. Oh, good, too. Look at that example. That example has an object of the preposition. See that 4? And see the noun clause that's underlined? That entire noun clause makes up the object of the preposition of for. All right, number 6. That people like to laugh. Booyah, noun clause. I always believed independent clause and that people like to laugh functions as a direct object. What you decide to do, noun clause. And it's right next to the verb is, and the verb is doesn't have a subject. So the noun clause is the subject of is. Wait a second. I don't like that. I did a bad thing. We'll give the prize. I may have to look this one up, but I'm pretty sure. We'll give the prize is the independent clause. Whoever is left is the noun clause, and it's functioning as an indirect object. Because what are we giving? The prize, and who are we giving it to? Whoever is left. I don't need to look that up. Just by reasoning it out right here with you, I know I'm golden. Whatever Mrs. Wing wants is your noun clause. Now, whatever, that's a marking word you don't often see. And then is fine. Well, whenever you have this right before a verb, like I said some time ago, that's going to be a subject. So it's the subject of is fine. His fear is independent clause. That he will forget his lines, noun clause. And hopefully you got that as a predicate nominative. Fear is that he will forget his lines. My parents are very impressed by, yeah, I know it gets a little goofy. You're thinking to yourself, well, my parents are very impressed, that's an independent clause, but if I add that by, but see these noun clauses, they mess with you. If you add that by, it doesn't seem to be independent, but when you're working with noun clauses, it kind of is, because once you add what goes with by, what I know about computers, you have the object of the preposition for by, and it all comes together nicely. If this is messing with you, like the fact that a noun clause can be a subject, or the fact that a noun clause can be a predicate, a object of the preposition, and it makes your independent clause look a little wacky because you include the preposition with your independent clause, thus making it not look like an independent clause, you got to mention it to me. Either tweet me or bring it up in class. I do hope to cover clarifications in class, but that won't be spending lots of time. Number 12. I have forgotten, independent clause, where I left my keys, noun clause, and that of course would be a direct object. 13. The problem was, independent clause, that Aaron hadn't arrived yet, noun clause, and that is a predicate nominative. Was being a linking verb, problem being the subject, problem was, and then the entire noun clause. What happened in the race? Noun clause. I was very surprised, independent clause, and there's that yucky little preposition, by, you include that with the independent clause, and then the noun clause is the object of the preposition by. And finally, that the milk was sour, oh well, noun clause, was immediately obvious, looking kind of fishy, I don't see a subject for that was, so immediately, because I am a descendant of Sherlock Holmes, I would think that milk was sour has to be the subject of the verb was. And there you have it, boys and girls. First noun clause in the exercise in the bag. I think the only thing that would be troubling you with this kind of clause would be the object of the preposition parts or the subject parts. I've got one more exercise we can do, and then we're off to adverb clauses. Rollin', 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 till these streams are swollen. Keep them doggies rollin' rawhide. That's what we're going to do, baby. Roll. Roll, roll, roll.